The Honourable, the member for Harbour Grace, Portagrave.
Thank you. Well, I think this would be my second time rising in this honourable House. My first time speaking to budget. I have yet to give my maiden speech, which I look forward to doing, I guess, sometime before we close our spring session. But before I start off, I would like to acknowledge the folks in Alberta and Fort McMurray. As mentioned in here previously, this province, of course, has a deep connection with those in Fort McMurray. A lot of my constituents, family members, are currently there. I spoke with a constituent this morning. Her daughter and their husband and two small children, of course, had to travel a significant distance, and they're now staying in other accommodations.
Can I ask members to take their conversations outside so we can hear the Speaker?
Thank you for your protection, Madam Speaker. But yes, as I was saying, I'm also happy and proud that our minister and our government have made contact with the province of Alberta to let them know that we have resources, personnel, and equipment on standby upon request. It's really interesting, Madam Speaker, hearing all the debate, the budget debate, and hearing, I guess, the opposition members and whatnot and the pleas they're putting forward. But I do believe that it's important to go back and review some of the very recent actions of the government, the previous administration. Well, I want to bring us back to Bill 29. I mean, as we know, Bill 29, that's right, Bill 29, as we know. How long ago was that? A couple of years, 2 to 3 years back for Bill 29. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that it was the longest filibuster in the history of Newfoundland and Labrador. There was severe opposition by the opposition parties and by the members of the public and even the media, for that matter. It was said that Bill 29 put us back in a category of third world countries with regards to rights and access to information. This went on for some time. We know some big legislation was pushed under the cloak of Bill 29, such as Muskrat Falls. And again, it blocked access to information. This legislation was put forward. And I ask over there, despite the pressure that was received from constituents and members of the public, how many opposition members now, which were government at the time, stood up and voted against Bill 29, despite the pressures they were hearing? How many? I wonder, Madam Speaker, I wonder how many? How many? How many? How many? I mean, the opposition, they're so keen now to stand on a soapbox and say, stand with your people and vote this way, vote against your government, vote, stand up. Absolutely, but I'm very confident that every elected member in this House is here for their constituents. I can speak for myself. I am in touch with my constituents every day, every evening. Since the budget has been discussed here, I've been on the phone till about 10:30 or even later every evening. Not only that, my weekends are dedicated to my constituents and the activities going on, and I'm a very big part of the community, and I support them 100%. That is exactly why I got involved with politics in the first place. It was always part of my long-term plan. It was always part of my long-term plan at some point in my career to put myself up for public office. Prior to my journalism days, I studied political science and completed my political science degree at Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax. And following this, I went on to complete the Radio Television Arts program in the Annapolis Valley, offered at NSCC with a major in journalism. And I guess given my schooling, and it was about a decade in the journalism profession. And then, of course, I made the leap. I was actually approached to get involved earlier when I did at the time, but the timing wasn't right. But it was, of course, during this time, which I'm here now, and I'm very grateful for my constituents to put me here as their representative, and I will represent their concerns. So being on the phone with them every night, meeting with them, I've been having meetings with groups, smaller groups, because I find that to be very productive, to meet with crowds, smaller crowds and organizations, town councils, to hear their concerns, and I am bringing their concerns back to the ministers and back to the Premier. And that's what we do as a team, and I will do that. They're my first priority in this, and you can mark that down every day and night till the day is long. That will be my priority, is to represent the people of Harbour Grace, Portagrave District, the 15,000 constituents that I represent, and I will certainly continue to do so. Every day I get a chance, or you'll hear the words Coley's Point Primary in this honourable House, because this is a top priority for the District of Harbour Grace, Portagrave. As I mentioned here recently in a petition with some research, we found a letter dated back in 2007, a recommendation, of course, by a consulting firm that the current building has exceeded its usefulness, and that it is a top priority and a recommendation to replace this building. Now again, this is in a community, we have an expanding population. The school, Coley's Point Primary, from K to 3, services children from Portagrave, Berrineed, Coley's Point, Bay Roberts, Shearstown, and Butlerville. Currently, we have over 350 students attending Coley's Point Primary. And again, as mentioned, this school, it's a 60-year-plus facility. Again, that 350 student population. I've been to the school many times, especially getting involved on my political journey. And these students currently are using closet space. They're utilizing closet space. There is no cafeteria in Coley's Point Primary. The children are eating on their working desks. And we all know at that age, with crayons and the pencils and lead, I mean, the germs that is there. And I mean, so this is something, I mean, I understand, with all due respect, that with the oncoming of all-day kindergarten, that students in other areas of the province will now have to use their classrooms as eating spaces. But unfortunately, this has been, this is what the students of Coley's Point have been used to. That's all they know, actually. So again, I will continue to work with the minister on this. We know that there's been money allocated for Coley's Point Primary in multiple budgets. And I ask the members opposite, where was the priority for Coley's Point Primary? It was listed to be replaced, but what happened? It got shuffled down the list. Every child in this school deserves to learn and grow in a healthy, optimal education facility, but I have to ask, what happened with the children in Coley's Point Primary? Where was the former member on Coley's Point Primary in the past 3 budgets? And for years to come. I mean, this is a passionate issue, and I will never, and I will not, give up this fight for Coley's Point Primary. Now, and also a big concern that I'm hearing in my district, obviously, is the slated closure of the courthouse in Harbour Grace, town of Harbour Grace. We know that there's been court services provided since the 1800s in this town, and at services districts such as Harbour Grace, Portagrave, Carbonear, Trinity Bay de Verde, Placentia St. Mary's, and Harbour, Maine. There are some 50,000 people come through the doors for this court services, and the concerns are being brought to me, and again, I will continue working with the minister and representing and voicing the concerns of my constituent. There is just work to be done, and I am 100% committed to that. But back to, of course, going back to the list of things that I also want to bring forth, because I really believe, and since the members opposite are so adamant about educating or informing the public, not necessarily factual information is being put forward, but again, let's talk about, before I leave, Bill 29, finally they caved after the public pressure. They hired a panel, again at the expense of taxpayers, and a whopping $1 million plus, unfortunately, to then remove legislation that was put forth. It was then removed after the work had been done, mind you, after the Muskrat Falls has been pushed through. It was removed at a cost of $1 million. Now, I also have to bring forward now, we can't forget the infamous Humber Valley paving fiasco. What happened in Humber Valley paving? Is it a coincidence, Madam Speaker, that Humber Valley paving had a direct connection to the, I guess, one of our candidates for the candidate for the PC leadership? What happened? I understand Mr. Bill Barry, a big player in the fishery here in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, was also interested in becoming putting his name forward here for the PC leadership. That didn't happen. However, Mr. Coleman graciously came forward, but we do know hours before that paper was submitted that magically the contract for Humber Valley paving disappeared. But it didn't disappear for free. It disappeared at a cost of $19 million to taxpayers' money. $19 million. Right there, that is the cost for Coley's Point Primary School. We were looking at our Coley's Point Primary School in comparison to Humber Valley paving. That's right. That's right. The member from St. John's Kitty Bitty is vocal as she always is, and we appreciate that, Madam Speaker. But again, the $19 million. And it's something else, too, that we want to bring forward. If I stand to be corrected on this, Madam Speaker, but we were due in the legislation in 2016 to review boundary changes.
Order, please.
to review the boundary changes for the electoral districts, because we know this was something that then opposition leader, but now the Premier, of course, committed to reviewing. But, as we know, the members opposite, the government of the day, they jumped the gun on that one, and oh yes, at this time now we need a boundary change. We need to slash, and their 8 seats were slashed in that legislature. Absolutely, their districts were removed. Which of course, I wasn't in this government at the time, Madam Speaker, last year, so I can, the honourable member, who I admire, by the way, I wasn't here to vote on that one. But as we know, that got pushed. There was a big, all of a sudden, this became very urgent to, to do this. This came at a hefty cost, unfortunately. As I said, 8 seats were slashed. Each member has now taken on significantly more constituents. However, I'm grateful for the district I represent. Magically, the town of Harbour Grace got moved to the Portagrave district, which has never been, they've never been in the same district in the time of history. In Newfoundland and Labrador, to have Harbour Grace grouped with Bay Roberts. They're both large centres. However, Harbour Grace has a special part in my place, it always will. I was educated down there in the Catholic system at the former St. Columba Harbour Grace Primary, and the support that I continue to receive in Harbour Grace is phenomenal, and I appreciate their support, and I will work them, and as a matter of fact, I work closely, and I'm in touch with those constituents daily. I spend a lot of my time in beautiful Harbour Grace, which I add was slated to be the capital of this province at one time. It would be wonderful if that was the case today.
Didn't have a good hockey team.
Yes. And also, too, I mean, on the dying days of the government, the previous administration, you know, there was no question that there was $25 billion in oil royalties over the past decade came through. Where's that money now? Where was the diversifying of our economies? We were born and we live on the fishery here in Newfoundland, Labrador. The fishery is paramount here in this province. Where was the diversification for our natural resources when we were flooded, when we were rich with oil money? And where is it gone now? And I really want to point out, it's important, of course, to voice the concerns of all constituents, but I would have much more respect and more peace of mind if the members opposite would please take responsibility. Take responsibility for where you've brought the province's finance. Because it's an insult to the electorate to stand there waving and bringing up claims and pleas that has never been mentioned previous until now when you find yourself in opposition. But anyway, back to the fishery. This is definitely a difficult budget. It's an ugly budget. I'll call it an ugly budget. And I continue to get concerns daily. And again, I will voice the concerns of my constituents with the ministers and with our Premier. But it is encouraging that amid the spending reductions in other areas, we are investing $2 million of the seafood and aquaculture innovation and transition program with the aim of supporting technology innovation in this critical part of the economy. So ultimately, it's an entire investment of $18.2 million, and that includes aquaculture, innovation, licensing, enforcement, industry, of course, renewal and marketing. And it's important to notice again how important the fishery is. It's very important to my district of Harbour Grace, Portagrave. The name Portagrave, we can't say Portagrave without thinking the fishery. I have about 200 inshore fishers throughout my district, and believe you me, it is very important, and I will certainly stand with them and to support them at any cost, and will voice their concerns and what we need for the fishery. I also have to mention, and it begs the question, I mean, at this time now in our history, we have a Liberal federal government, as we know, and a provincial Liberal government. But I have to ask, again, the fishery and search and rescue being so important to the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, where were the members opposite when the Harper administration closed our Maritime Rescue Subcentre at a cost savings of only $1 million? Couldn't get a meeting. But where was the fight, though? We didn't see any fight. There was a large rally that was held down on the waterfront from members of the public, took the initiative to drive that. But where were our members opposite on that one with the Maritime Rescue Subcentre? But I am happy now that at least the Trudeau administration is committed to reviewing this, and I certainly hope that we have those search and rescue resources back in place. And again, it goes to reiterate how important search and rescue is. And I'll take you back to the time of the tragic, tragic death of Burton Winters and how, at the time, those services failed that young man. And again, it has to be criticised how the previous administration, the Premier at the time, Premier Dunderdale, with all due respects, did not so much have a meeting with the grandmother of Burton Winters. So we have to think about our people. And so, but please, don't get up there and stand on the soapbox saying this and this and this. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the third party here. A lot of respect for my friends over there in the third party. We all know they fight for their constituents. They fight for their constituents, but it really is disheartening to see them now link arms with the opposition. I mean, this time last year, they were highly critical of what they were seeing, but now all of a sudden they're dance partners, and they're over there dancing and beating on the drum together. It almost looks like an endorsement of the previous actions. Is this the case? Madam Speaker, I ask, is this the case? Is this the case?
The truth is coming out.
I'm telling you, politics, never a dull moment. But I did take the time to prepare some notes. Again, I want to emphasize the importance of the fishery and how this budget does support our fishery, again, which is very important here in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. The most recent statistics show that northern cod biomass is at 27% of its historical might. This is very significant. It's a very significant recovery, but there is still much more work to be done. It's still quite not enough to commence a commercial cod fishery, but as you know, we are very committed to that. We must push Ottawa to get the cod on and other fisheries on a recovery path and establish targets and timelines. For without a healthy resource, there is no industry and there are no communities. We know how important the fishery is.
Absolutely.
Ottawa also needs to get back to investing significantly in fisheries research. Without the basic research, we cannot properly manage our resources. Ottawa needs to ensure that our fishery is built back to where it once was, and with investment, commitment and care, a sustainable fishery can happen, and I'm confident to say it will happen. Remember, a sustainable fishery is not just one that can be fished forever, but one that also sustains our communities. Ottawa must also give us fairer food fishery. We need a fair food fishery here in our province. Ottawa must also address the important point of contention with the federal government. It must respect and implement the principle of adjacency. Very important in Newfoundland and Labrador. And this will ensure communities will stay alive and thrive. We have no future if fishing communities are disconnected from the fish that swim by the door of adjacency. To quote a former president of MUN, Dr. Leslie Harris, either there are fish or the community dies. There is no middle ground. Ottawa needs to get their cod on, and that means they have to address our concerns, accept our solutions, and look to the other countries, such as Norway and Iceland, who have thriving fisheries. I was reading recently about a small town in Norway that employs 300 people around the clock to process 180 to 190 tons of fish daily. So again, the fishery is very important, and I'm happy to see this investment in our fishery for Newfoundland and Labrador. But again, I want to reiterate the importance of Collies Point Primary. This is, again, a very, very important topic in my district. Again, since 2007, when it was recommended by a professional consulting firm that this building be replaced, it got looked over. We know then in the past several budgets there was money allocated in 3 past budgets. 3 past budgets when there was a member here when the oil money was rich, but it did not happen. But I will be standing by Collies Point Primary. I will be standing by with my constituents on the topic of the Harbour Grace Courthouse, and I am here for each and every constituent. My office number, and anyone can call at any time to our constituency office, and I will commend my constituency assistant, Miss Eileen Smith, who works tirelessly to help our constituents. And that number can be, anyone can reach us there at 786-1372. For those calling long distance, I welcome all calls around the province, Madam Speaker, at 1-866-729-1594. You can reach us there. Again, we're here to help the people of Alberta. I wish my mother, my grandmother, a very, very happy Mother's Day. I certainly wouldn't be where I am without their support. And thank you very much, Madam Speaker.